Hey y'all, thanks for joining me, Dorothea. There's a lot going on with the Iran-Israel-US issue lately, so I have a string of clips to show you on this issue from analysts that make really good points. One of them is an award-winning journalist as well. So I'm going to share that with you so that we can contemplate what's going on. And I'm going to end with a couple of prophecies to go along with this to tie it together. So let me start with the first video with Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis. He said this a few days ago, but I want to give you that information at first. The military buildup information at that time. On the 21st, he said this.
About 15% of the global fleet of aerial refueling tankers, about 58 in the last about 48 hours, have deployed into zones where they can launch an attack from. That is an enormous, I think that brings to the total 109 aerial refueling tankers. There are somewhere between, depending on who's doing the counting and what they're counting, somewhere between 200 and 250 fighter aircraft on top of a lot of the deployments that have already existed, some of the things that are within range there. And as Gary's showing you there, some of them are located in Jordan. Some others are, according to satellite imagery released by the Chinese of all people. Some are in Saudi Arabia. I mean, they're literally all over the map. Gary periodically shows you that one with our bases throughout the region. They're dotted everywhere throughout there. There's also a lot, surprisingly, in European bases. A lot of the things that we can bring to bear here will depart from U.S. air bases, even in Europe. There was a big issue with whether the UK would accept that. More on that in just a minute. But the bottom line is here. This is on top of, and one of the other categories I do want to point out is that somewhere around 150 C-17 and C-5 transport. That is literally 50% of the C-17 transport. Those are those great big, almost looking like a 747, but they're for transporting things. You could literally play a game of basketball in the back of one of those. When I was on active duty, I several times took a C-17 transport going from one place to another in the Middle East, and it's cavernous. It's like a flying gym. C-5s are even bigger. It's amazing how big those things. Yeah, there it is. Thank you very much. You see that how big those things are, and there is an enormous amount of kit and gear and ammunition above all that can be flown on those. So that tells you a couple of things. Number one, that this is going to be a sustained operation. This is not going to be a strike like some of the things that have happened in the past. It's not going to be like Operation Midnight Hammer, which was basically a 2-hour operation where we allegedly hit, or not allegedly, but it hit a couple of nuclear facilities, and then that was the end of it. This is being set up for a sustained campaign, possibly weeks, possibly even months. I mean, we have all the assets there that this can continue on for months in terms of refueling and rearmament. All those things are necessary. When you're talking about this many aircraft coming in from all these different places throughout Europe, throughout the Middle East, it's like flying gas stations. You may have heard some of the descriptions about that. That's what some of these aerial refueling tankers can do. And all of that tells everybody that right now, all the pieces are in place that this could launch as early as tonight. Whether it will or not remains to be seen. That's a political decision. It's not a military one.
And of course, you know that didn't happen on the 21st. But he's showing us here. He's showing us the buildup of the military in that region, the bases, all the bases around there, all of the military assets that have accumulated in that region. We haven't seen this heavy of a military presence there since the beginning of the war in Iraq, like right before we went into Iraq. So obviously this is not going to be a limited strike as Trump thinks he's been talking about on this issue. So there's that, what he had to say. Colonel Davis had to say. Now, let's go to the Cradle says, U.S.-led coalition withdraws troops from Iraqi Kurdistan over Iran war fears. So it says here, French, Swedish, Italian, and Norwegian troops were among those who left a key air base in northern Iraq. So those groups left northern Iraq. This was out on the 24th. So that's the one we see that there has been some withdrawals, okay, from that. But this is a mixture of different countries' troops, along with apparently, I guess, some of ours. That's all I've heard, or we have heard recently with troop withdrawals, although I have heard that Syria has withdrawn U.S. troops there. Where they're being, they're withdrawn from there, but where are they going from there? I would say they've been repositioned somewhere else in the region. So let's go to the next one. This one is award-winning journalist Max Blumenthal explaining the issue here with Kushner and Trump and Netanyahu.
But Jared Kushner, as a boy, his parents hosted Benjamin Netanyahu. He would have to get out of his bed so Netanyahu could stay over at their house. He was practically in bed with Netanyahu. So this is who's left to make this determination. Jared Kushner holds no position in the U.S. government. It wasn't even made known to Trump's supporters or even those in Trump's inner circle that Jared Kushner would be playing a role in this administration. And he comes out of nowhere. And now it's up to him to make what will be, I think, one of the most fateful decisions of our lifetimes and certainly of the Trump administration. Will he decide that Trump will go taco, as Trump's opponents call him? Trump always chickens out, and that he'll remove all of these military assets and disappoint Netanyahu, because Netanyahu will never be able to get this many U.S. military assets and this level of force posture around Iran, probably again for the rest of his life, with a president in office who controls both chambers of Congress through his party, who is essentially a vehicle for Israeli influence through the donations, hundreds of millions of dollars from Miriam Adelson and Paul Singer and other Zionist, MAGA-oriented billionaires. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Netanyahu. And if Trump chickens out, if Trump finds an off-ramp, which would actually be the right thing to do, not just politically or diplomatically, but also militarily for the U.S., if he does not do that, the Israelis will be furious. And as you mentioned, they could take they could go for some black operations, a false flag. They could just directly attack Iran too.
Okay, that's what Max has to say. So it's, as they say, it's Bibi's last chance to do what he's been wanting to do with the regime change with Iran and the Greater Israel Project. So, yeah, pretty big deal there on the Izzy side, okay? Which doesn't exactly match up with the U.S. side as far as our interests, as most of you probably already know. So I'm going to go to something kind of similar to that. Patrick Henningson said on this issue is also important. So let me play that for you.
I think that I think personally it's a little bit wishful thinking to think that all of keeping sanctions on and strangling the country and continuously threatening Iran is going to promote regime change at this point. So on the military side, back to that point, I did get the distinct, and I did inquire a lot about China and Russia assistance there, and it didn't seem like they were desperate, or they're prepared to basically fight on their own and go it alone. Obviously, any assistance that they get, I'm sure it's welcome, provided they can integrate it into the systems they have. But Iran has a bona fide space program. They have multi-stage rockets. I saw a demonstration of their satellite painting targets around the Persian Gulf. They have their own proprietary algorithms. They have their own proprietary GPS equivalents, which they can also interface with the Chinese Baidu systems as well. They're very advanced in terms of communications and jamming and intercept electronic warfare. I saw the U.S. drone. I ran my hands over the wing of the U.S. drone that was downed, I believe, under Barack Obama's administration in mint condition. They intercepted the uplink and captured it, and then took control of the U.S. drone. They've done that twice. So Obama asked for. They got a call from Obama after that saying, "Can we have that back, please?" And that was kind of a joke on the Iranian end. But so to think that they are capable in terms of drones and various types of drones. They have all sorts of different versions of Shahed drones, many different versions of cruise missiles. The Pave cruise missile, they have something equivalent to a U.S. Tomahawk. And in terms of missiles, they have such a wide array. And again, this is coordinated with proprietary satellite capabilities as well. And so they have basically everything they need in their array to defend themselves. And it's so interesting that Iran never invested a lot in manned fighter jets, having a massive fleet of manned fighters. They made that decision many, many years ago to put their limited resources, because of sanctions, into something more practical. And so they decided they're going to go all in on drones and missiles, and also air defense. And I think this investment and this foresight on the part of the Iranians, I think it's been a good strategy considering the limited resources they have. And so much so, if you think about it, the British made a statement. How true it is remains to be seen, but that they won't allow the facilities in Diego Garcia to be used to launch an attack on Iran. Why? Because they know full well, the British know that Iran have the capability in terms of intermediate range missiles to hit those facilities if they're being implicated in a war of aggression against them. So the British know this. This is why they've issued that statement. And it's not only because of Diego Garcia and the Chagos Islands, it's because of Cyprus. Because Cyprus will be absolutely pivotal. The U.S. and the British bases there, RAF Akrotiri, that will be pivotal for providing a safe haven for Israeli F-35s should Nevatim and other facilities come under attack. It's also an escape hatch for the Israeli political elites as well. And that's going to be on the table. Article 5 doesn't mean anything NATO-wise. Cyprus is a NATO country. If Iran decides to attack Cyprus, it's neither here nor there, because the U.S. has already launched an unprovoked war of choice against Iran. So to think that there's going to be some Article 5 case and the entirety of NATO is going to pile in on Iran, I don't think that's going to happen, because, again, to my initial point, U.S. this is all instigated by the United States and Israel. They are the instigators in this conflict. This is a, quote, war of choice. This is an unprovoked, undeclared war of aggression. It's in violation of every single international law and convention, and it's against the U.S. It's against U.S. law as well. So Cyprus will become a collateral damage if they decide to go forward. And the last thing I'll say, that there's a huge risk. The longer our U.S. naval assets are loitering, the higher there's a risk of a false flag attack. That is not a hyperbolic statement. We're talking about Israel. They have form in this regard. They have carried out false flags before against the United States, against naval assets during a major conflict, in order to blame it on another country. In this case, they'll try to blame it on Iran. In '67, with the U.S. Liberty, they tried to blame it on Egypt. They will do Israel if they're desperate enough and Trump's not moving quick enough. Let me tell you, that's a huge risk, and I would not discount that.
Yeah. He made an excellent point there. Patrick made an excellent point, bringing up the Cyprus issue. It's been a while. We haven't talked about the Cyprus thing, but we know that the British are all over Cyprus with their bases, as I've discussed before. But, American bases apparently are there too. It's their platform to go to the Middle East if they can't get to the other, if they can't use the other launching places, because a lot of Europe is not allowing, as I said, the U.S. to take off from their lands, territory, to strike Iran. So, collateral damage, he said, on Cyprus. Now, of course, if we go by the prophecies, there's nothing in the prophecies that says that Cyprus is going to be destroyed, as far as we've seen. But I could see why he's saying that, because it's going to be used by the Izzies and the U.S. And if Iran is trying to strike any of the areas where military are gathered, and maybe even the Izzy leadership or whatever, they are probably going to do so. Okay? So I thought that was a very interesting portion of what Patrick said on this issue. Now I'm going to go to the next clip I wanted to share with you. This has to do with China's connections with Iran, and what this Chinese man says. His name is Victor, and it's very important to listen to what he says regarding their ties with Iran.
Breaking news that we have to start with, a little bit off topic, but maybe not so much. Reuters has just reported, and what they're reporting is that Iran is very close to a deal with China to purchase anti-ship cruise missiles. This, of course, is just as the United States is getting ready to deploy a vast naval force, or already has, to the Iranian coast ahead of a possible attack on Iran. It's a little off topic, but Victor, would you comment on this for us? Because we're talking about Chinese, they're called CM-302 missiles, described as supersonic missiles. They have a range of about 300,000 kilometers. They're designed to evade shipborne defenses they go really low down to almost the surface of the water, and then can rise again.
Wow.
Did I say something? 300, yes, kilometers. Victor, what do you make of this? What should we think of this? What does it say?
Thank you very much. Both China and Iran are two fully independent countries with their sovereignty. And there is no international law which prohibits China and Iran to engage with each other in commercial transactions. And China happens to produce some of the most sophisticated missiles of all kinds. And it's absolutely right for China and Iran to size up each other and engage in whatever economic and commercial transactions they desire to do that, including involving such military missiles. And I think the whole world should be put on notice that both China and Iran will have full sovereign right to do such commercial transactions with each other, and no country should pretend to be surprised.
Yes, that's the most forward and aggressive I've ever heard a Chinese diplomat advisor speak. Really, they've become more vocal recently, obviously because their interests are being threatened. And yeah, he's basically saying, we're two sovereign countries. We can trade with and with each other as much as we want, which is true. And if we want to, if we want to give weapons to Iran, we can do that. Basically, is what he's saying. And it's just a very interesting tone that I'm not used to hearing from Chinese. But if you haven't watched that video, Rick Sanchez's interview with this advisor, Victor, and Pasquale, I think was the guy's name, who's he speaks for Japan. Fascinating conversation. I may get into it later. But anyway, this was in regard to Iran's issue and China's connection to it. They seem to be locked in with Iran, So, let me go to the next video I wanted to share is Colonel Macgregor. And just this little portion I want to share with you because he brings up another point, along with all these other great points, that's important.
Where are our allies? Who is going to provide anything to us? Who brings any real combat power to the fight? How many of these people have armies, air forces, missile forces, air defense forces that are of any value to us? Well, I think we can expect the British to show up from the IRF with whatever few number of F-35s that they have. Obviously, the Israelis are going to be helping. But, this is one of the painful truths that we don't like to come to terms with. We beat our chest about we won World War I. We won World War II. No, we didn't. We were part of a winning alliance.
Yeah.
And that alliance could not have won without us, but we could never have had a snowball's chance in hell of defeating the Germans without allies.
Great point.
Really important portion here. That's right. Basically, he's saying that the U.S. is going this alone. It doesn't have this huge backing. Okay, so like he was talking about World War I, World War II. Yeah, there were the Axis and the Allies, and there were more than one country. It was several working together. And here we have, on the other side, we have Russia, China, and Iran. But there's actually some backups to even that, India and Pakistan, of all things. I just heard about Pakistan it was probably going to back Iran. There is more on that side than there is on our side. The U.S., as he said, oh yes, well, of course Israel's there, but, I wouldn't call that a real great ally if I were you. And then there's the British, of course. But really, it's very small backing. There isn't huge armies backing us. The U.S., that's it. We're it, in this tiny group. So I thought that was an important piece to put out there as well. Now, let me go back. Here is what I thought interesting. Larry Johnson makes an interesting point as well in this issue.
You're not going to have an attack on Iran until you start seeing the embassies getting rid of non-essential personnel and or closing. We've only seen that in Lebanon right now. But Baghdad's still intact, Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, Doha, in Dubai, the United Arab, none of those have been drawn down. So there's not an attack imminent yet. The second thing is the lack of NOTAMs, what are called notices for air missions. That's not happening.
Okay, so the important thing he says here, it's another important piece. He doesn't see the withdrawal, the exiting of the embassies at this time, only in Lebanon. And we know last time attacks happened, people in Israel, their embassies were evacuated, Russia's and China's and all the others there. And that was already starting to happen before the 12-day war. So since this is going to be a larger scale, obviously, way larger, Larry's mentioning all these other places that would have to have the evacuation happen in these other countries. Now, this last one was just kind of a, because the Pentagon is talking to Trump and saying, I really don't know if this is such a great idea. Even Kane is coming out saying, oh, well, I don't think of course, Larry Johnson says he's just covering himself, covering his own butt. But U.S. aiming to shift blame for Iran strikes onto Izzy, a source says. So, again, with Trump saying, oh, I want to do limited strikes, as he put it, it doesn't matter because Tehran is going to deem any attack as a full-scale war because coming from them, it's an existential threat to their existence. So, with all this information, we obviously know that Trump is hesitating, not really crazy about this idea, because he knows what will do to his presidency if things go downhill. But we see the desperation of the Izzies and the last chance for Netanyahu. So I'm going to end this with the two prophecies that I believe probably have to happen before the attack on Iran. Now, I may be totally wrong, but there's the blood moon, which actually happens next week, March 3rd and 4th, okay? And then there's the 65 highway in Greece that's going to be completed between April and June of this year, a couple more months or so, 2 to 3 months. So it's likely that the attacks would happen sometime after these are completed, or the tail end of the completion of that road, I'm thinking, or completely done before I think this strike will happen. But it's possible that it'll happen before then, of course. But as long as the embassies haven't been evacuated, as these other issues of worries from the Pentagon, and but remember what Patrick said and Max Blumenthal said about the false flag. If Trump drags his feet or gets cold feet and doesn't move fast enough, some kind of false flag will probably happen. I mean, after all, at the 12-day war, Israel struck before even, the U.S. was supposedly negotiating, but still, the U.S. had to come in and back them up afterwards, and this could happen again. So, I wanted to give you all that information. I thought there was a really great nuggets of information in this, different points being made from different people, and all of them were very interesting and important. So I hope you found that informative and interesting as well. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for following my channel, supporting me, and for sharing my videos and liking my videos.